Hey everyone, Happy New Year's! I hope you've started off the year really well, and we are starting the year off with a behind the scenes. Every Thursday, I host an episode of either behind the scenes or transformation time. My name is Diana Lizarazo, and today's guest speaker is Elisabeth Kelly. Now, before we get started, I have some exciting news. Something to get your new year started is I have a platform. It is a social networking platform for the real estate investing community. So if you're a real estate investor, if you're a real estate mentor, or you're a real estate professional, meaning a lawyer, accountant, contractor, anyone else that helps support us real estate investors, this is the platform you want to be on so you can become searchable, visible, and to be able to help the community out and find your sources. Now, to get back to the show, on Behind the Scenes, our guest speakers share their stories of projects they've worked on. They'll be talking about the numbers, they'll be talking about the problems they've encountered and the strategies they've worked on. So if that's what you're looking for, then stay tuned and keep on listening. Now let's get Elisabeth on. Let's send her some love, guys. Let's send her some hearts, and And I usually have to accept it twice for some reason. Let me see. Do we accept again? Maybe I cancel the invite and then invite you. I'm going to invite you, Elisabeth. I don't know why this takes 20 tries to get it going. Come on, you can do it. There you go.
Hey, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year's. How have you been?
Amazing, thanks. How are you doing?
Great, great. And just for our viewers, let's just give them a little bit of background on how amazing you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your real estate strategy? And what do you do in the real estate world?
I've been an active real estate investor for almost 20 years now, and my husband and I have done pretty much every strategy. I have a few that I'm really passionate about, rent-to-owns and multifamilies being two of my favorite ones, but private lending I'm leaning into more and more right now, and then I'm also looking at moving into the land development space. And I'm also a real estate coach, so one of the things I'm really passionate about is giving back to the investor community and making sure that people have the information that they need to make the right decisions before they get themselves into hot water or make a few costly mistakes. Because we know it's not like buying the wrong pair of shoes, right? When you when you buy the wrong property, then it can cost you quite a bit of money to get back out of it. So
100% completely agree. It's like you said, it's so important to just come informed. And
absolutely.
that's what we're here for. So I'm so excited. So which project do we get to hear about?
Well, the one that I've been working most closely on, I think, is the turning around my commercial building in Northern Ontario. So I think I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. I'm always interested to hear, and part of the reason I love doing Instagram Lives with you is because you have such a big network. And I love to hear people's ideas of things that I could do because in my experience, some of the best ideas, some of the best solutions come from collaborations, come from people putting their thoughts together, their experiences together. So I'm always interested to hear, once I share the details of the building, what does everybody else have to say? What are other people thinking might be a good fit or a good opportunity?
I love that. I completely agree because we all come from different backgrounds, different experiences, and so it's always great to hear from someone else. So, what project are you going to be? So you said it's in Northern Ontario. What is? I guess then it sounds like there's a problem that you're trying to solve. I guess what is like? What was the expected real estate strategy? Like, what did you expect to do with it?
Well, we bought what was formerly a senior's home. It was owned by the town of Kirkland Lake. And when we purchased it, it had been vacant for about 10 years. So our vision with it, or initially in 2012, I guess, when we bought it, was to turn it into housing for minors. So we saw, all these minors coming to town. They all need somewhere to live. So that was our vision. It took us a while to get things off the ground. So we had some hiccups along the way. We rented to the local hockey team. That didn't turn out very well. We had some other bumps and that kind of thing until we finally started really building a reputation. I would say probably staffing was one of the biggest issues for us initially. But what ended up happening was we sort of got the whole team put together. And before COVID, we had a restaurant, we had a dance studio, we had a hair salon, and then we had 48 or 50 rooms that were dedicated to providing medium-term stay accommodations for minors, people who were coming into town, contractors, that kind of stuff. And then COVID hit, and we lost the restaurant, and we lost the dance studio, and we lost most of our minors. So now we're in, I guess, April of 2022. I kind of looked at all the books and looked at all the numbers, and I thought, you know what? I want to really put some time and energy into this. And it just goes to show you that what you focus on expands, because I started putting the time and energy into it. And I started seeing where there were issues. The maintenance wasn't being done as fast as I wanted. So I think it left people in the building with a bit of the feeling that I wasn't paying attention or that I didn't care about their comfort. We weren't asking for feedback. We weren't, I just felt like the building was looking old and it was looking tired. So I did a bit of a refinance on it, and we started painting, we started fixing things up, and we made a number of different upgrades. I didn't want to spend, it wasn't the kind of project where I wanted to sink a couple $100,000 in and then to figure out if this was still a viable business option. So what I did was I kind of bootstrapped it. So the very first thing I did was addressing free marketing. So we started putting up ads everywhere, Kijiji, Facebook, those kinds of things. And then we did some small bandit signs, and we put those out along the side going, hey, we're still here. If you need a place to stay, let us know. And we made some mistakes along the way. We rented sometimes to people that we shouldn't have. And that caused a lot of disruption and chaos for the other residents. So when I got crystal clear on who I was marketing to, who really needed to be in the building, who a fit was, then I was able to start growing and to start building from there. So by the time the summer came around, we were, we'd been cash flow negative by thousands of dollars in the spring. By the time the summer came around, we were breaking even. Actually, we made a little bit. And then now this winter, we're much more stable than we were. And we're doing much better. So we focused on our systems and processes. We focused on our people, and we focused on our marketing. And that was how we brought it around.
I love that. That's interesting. So for the youth, that was a project with the city, and was it like youth, or these youth were just paying like as if like a bachelor or one bedroom or something like that?
Yeah, so the building had originally been owned by the city, but the city was not part of it once we purchased it. We actually purchased it on a VTB. So for 2 years, the seller held the financing because we wanted the opportunity to get money coming in so that we could get a traditional mortgage on it. And then our target market ends up being a lot of the guys who work in the mines. They receive like a daily allowance, but they aren't necessarily from where they're actually living. So, or they're not from where they're working, so they have somewhere else. Like a lot of the guys, they're from New Brunswick, for example. So if they're working for the company and they're 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, they want somewhere clean, quiet, safe that they can live for 12 days, and then they're going to go home again. So they don't want to spend a fortune. They're not looking for the Taj Mahal. They're not looking for anything fancy, but they want clean, quiet, safe. Because when these guys don't sleep and they're underground, they're dangerous, right? Like everybody's lives are in each other's hands underground. So we respect that. So we have single rooms, and we do have double rooms. We can fit a range of budgets. So we made sure, some of the rooms have private washrooms, other rooms have shared washrooms, and there's kind of a whole range in there. And now we've got a couple of seniors in there, which is really nice. They provide sort of that stable, consistent, they're independent living enough that they don't need consistent care. They don't need a nurse or anyone like that, but they don't want the hassle of lawn care, and especially in Northern Ontario, usually we get a lot of snow. There's nothing right now this year, but usually we get quite a bit. So it's just figuring out that niche, who we best cater to. And this year, for the first time ever, we actually have a ladies' wing. So the ladies are all grouped together in one wing, and they support each other. They make meals together. They have their own washroom. Like, it just, it's ended up coming together a lot better than I thought, actually.
Yeah, that's really nice, and it goes to show, like you're saying, it started off with one idea, or even just it sounded like even it was evolving, but you made it to one idea, and then COVID just made you like revamp and rechange everything. Because, like you said, like I guess most of the people left was because everything closed down, and they don't have any money to make because they're going to, and they might as well go home, see their families. Like you said, they're probably just there to work, and then they're probably going to home to their families, and they just thought, well, if this is closing down, might as well go home.
Yeah.
Which is, and I'm just curious, actually, what made you not decide to continue it being a senior home? Like, what made you decide to like convert it into just a commercial building?
Well, when it was a seniors home and run by the town of Kirkland Lake, the government brought in all these new rules and regulations, and they make a lot of sense. It's things like every room must have its own washroom. And when you think about disease transmission, that makes a ton of sense. Like, why would you want someone carrying a bedpan from one room, like down the hallway, or, sharing? So, they started trying to retrofit the existing building, and it was not cost effective, and it was too problematic. So they ended up building a brand new seniors building right next to the hospital. It's all, it was all brand new as of, I don't know, 10, 12, 14 years ago, whatever it was. So much newer, much more modern, better capacity right next to the hospital, which made it much more appealing. So then the town of Kirkland Lake sold it to a gentleman who wanted to run it as a seniors home. And he then discovered the same issue that the town had. So
Yeah,
it's sad.
retrofit.
It's sad for years and years, and people would look at it and they'd have the vision, but sometimes when we have the vision, we need to make sure we have the resources, the people, the support around us to actually make that vision come to life. And that was kind of one of the biggest pieces I saw that was missing, was that you have to have that clear vision, and then you have to have the experts who can help you make it happen. And the town of Kirkland Lake, we've been in Kirkland Lake since 2010. We've been there a long time. I always had this idea of what it was like to be in a small town, and I thought it meant that, like, that people would want to work with you, and people would be really excited that you were there, and people would be really supportive, and we kind of discovered that wasn't always the case. So it's definitely, forced us to pivot in some ways. We do have some areas of the building right now that I'm still figuring out what to do. We're just in the process of painting, and I'm sort of focusing one area at a time. And again, I know that there are investors who might come in with, $250,000 and fix everything up at once. But I want to take a more measured approach, because I never want to be in a situation, but especially in a market like this, where the cash flow is in the negative position. I don't want that. And I know for a lot of people, 2022, 2023, those were really tough years because of the cost of money. But for us, it was actually tougher during COVID than last year was for us, because we were so measured and so focused on cash flow and not overspending.
Yeah, I love that. And the fact that, like, you're saying that you're willing to pivot, which I think is important. And you said also, which I think is also important, is thinking about the wording that you use, because I think that's also, I've experienced that too, where the wording really changes the type of people that you're looking for. So it's like that clarity and understanding who it is that you're going for is so impactful. It's so important. And I was curious, actually, since you have a commercial building, have you ever thought of going to the city to see what the city, like if the city has heard of any other businesses wanting to come in, or anyone that's looking to, like, for a commercial building?
We haven't approached them directly like that. I think in part it was because we found it somewhat challenging to work with the city. For example, when the restaurant opened, there was a dining room when it was a senior center, and people would come and They ran Meals on Wheels out of there, and then all the residents obviously in the building and the staff and everything could come and eat. So when we took that space and opened it up as we had a company that came in and ran a restaurant out of it, the town came to us and said, well, you're no longer institutional. And we're like, yeah, fine, fair. We're no longer a seniors home. They're like, now you're mixed use commercial. And then they told us that in order to accommodate this little restaurant, that we had to have dozens of parking spots, like dozens, like a crazy amount of parking spots. And when we ran the numbers on it, it would have cost us like $150,000 to bring in the parking spots to do what they wanted us to do. And we're like, there's other restaurants in town who have no parking. There are other restaurants in town who have, a couple of parking spots. Like, why are you coming to us and saying that we need 60 parking spots for this little tiny restaurant? And they're like, well, those are the rules. And we said, but why don't the rules apply to everybody else? And they said, well, they don't. Doesn't matter what we do with everybody else. This is the way it is for you. And I was kind of shocked, because I was like, we're employing people, we're feeding people, we're giving people, like, we had it all set up with the restaurant that they were doing meal plans, and they were helping out the guys downstairs that they could buy, lunches, or they could buy dinners, and they come back at the end of the day working and their meals were right there. Like, we were literally had this vision for being this one stop, like, come and work in Kirkland Lake, and attracting people and companies to the community. And it didn't feel like it landed very well. So in terms of my
Oh, that's so
desire
interesting.
to go back to the town, it's probably not great at this point. And that being said, I'm sure there's been turnover and there's new people and everything else, but it made me want to stay away from the town, if that makes sense. And I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of times this kind of stuff, when we reach out to our network and we talk to our people, conversations like this, I'm hoping someone will reach out to me afterwards and say, oh, I know Kirkland Lake, or I've stayed in Kirkland Lake, or, I know Northern Ontario, and, have you considered this? Have you tried this? That's typically what I find where some of the greatest ideas come from.
Yeah, I love that. And that's so true. And so then most of your experience, yeah, with the town, what about the people in the town? Because it's one thing that I do, I think it's so true that you say also is, and I don't know if it's just like the township, the municipality, but like the town going into towns is something that I feel like you do have to be prepared to get into, because I have heard other people talk about, like if you're not one of them and they know immediately, like they're not willing to help you. It's like they become very like a clan or something, and it's like you really have to kind of like get in there. And you've been actually in there for a long time, like you said, 2010. But it's almost like you have to have someone there that
Yeah.
that works there or knows that, like, be one of like to become best friends with that one person, and then all of a sudden like they open up the doors for you.
Yeah. So I found some wonderful people, like one of my staff, April. She just jumped on here. She's been in Kirkland Lake most of her life. So I mean, she was, we found amazing people like April. I have some great staff. In general, I found people have been somewhat suspicious. Like, why are you, from down south? You're from Toronto. Why are you coming to our town? What are you going to do? And there was a lot of rumors, which I wasn't used to. Like, having grown up in Scarborough, then I moved to Newmarket when I got married. Like, you're kind of anonymous. Like, you might bump into people at the grocery store, but you go to Kirkland Lake and you don't go to the grocery store without seeing people, and you see people in the parking lot and you see people walking down the street. Like, everybody knows each other, and it's so different than I'm used to. And there was things said, oh, they came to town and they kicked people out of their apartment because they weren't paying enough rent. And we never did that. I mean, we have a guy living in one of our buildings. He's paying 200 and some dollars all inclusive for a 1-bedroom apartment, because we don't kick people out. But people just say things. And the difference that we had was we sort of brought that, GTA investor mentality, and we took it to a small community. So, if you sign a lease, we're going to hold you to your lease. If you say you're going to pay this in rent, then if you don't pay that in rent, then we're going to go through the legal process and we're going to evict you. And I think sometimes in smaller communities, maybe people sort of rely on kind of word of mouth and handshake and those kinds of things, but we didn't know who we could trust and who we couldn't. So we just developed these company policies, and that's what we followed.
Mm-hmm.
So there were some amazing people, some warm, kind, friendly people, some people who opened their homes and who would have us over for dinner. And, we made some great friends. But in terms of what it was like to do business in a small town, it was different than I expected. There were definitely some challenges, and I learned a lot. And I feel like I'm a much better business owner because of those experiences and that opportunities, because I really had to focus on what are my systems and processes. Who am I as a business? What do I stand for? What is my integrity like? And this was really opening my property management company in 2010 was really my first foray going from an employee into being a business owner. And I didn't realize how different that was. It was so rewarding because nobody's telling me now to do things that, my integrity and my ethics are causing issue with. But at the same time, you get put in situations and you're like, what is the right decision here?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. And so for the restaurant, so then they made you then technically to have to close down the restaurant, I guess, right? Is that what happened with the restaurant, or how did you guys manage? Or the timing was just like COVID happened, so it was just like everything just kind of fell into place. It was like might as well close down.
Yeah, well, you got it. So the restaurant unfortunately didn't make it through the first wave of COVID, and that sort of ended our obligation to have to, spend $150,000 for 60 parking spots. So it kind of played out that way. But in all honesty, sometimes you feel like those things that are really tough and that are really hard and they feel like setbacks, they're actually in some ways blessings. Like when the dance studio was open, we had a lot of conflict between the loud music from the dance studio, the parents in and out in the parking lot, and then the residents in the building who were doing shift work and wanted to be able to sleep and that kind of thing. So they didn't want the doors banging all the time. They didn't want the loud music, and they didn't want the parrots chatting away in the parking lot and that kind of stuff. So it's really allowed me I kind of view it like a bonsai tree. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they grow very slowly, and you have to prune them very meticulously to create this shape that you want. And that's really given me the opportunity now that the dance studio is free and open, I'm actually leaving that space. That'll probably be one of the last ones that I'll turn around and tackle. But I say to myself, okay, what are the needs? Well, it needs to be quiet. I don't want more tenants. I want it to be hands off. I'd like to get a business in there. And that was when self-storage popped into my head. And so I've been spending the last couple of months doing some research, looking at self-storage an option. Can I do it in the size of a space? What are the rules around this? How much money is it going to cost? So even within this one investment opportunity, there are so many different pieces of operating this business, because I could choose to run the self-storage place myself, or I could turn around and bring in investors and partners to do that. Or I could turn around and say, hey, does somebody else want to run a self-storage business, and you just pay me the rent and I'll rent you the space. So it gives me
Mm-hmm.
lots of different opportunities, and it gives me a lot of freedom. One of the
Mm-hmm.
things I learned was that I want to be more careful who I choose in terms of partners. I'm not looking for it. Before, I used to look for partners who were not involved at all. Partners who just had, they could help out with the financing, and, I'd chat with them every quarter, let them know what was going on. But, they weren't involved in the day to day, and they didn't want to know what was going on. Now I'm more looking for partners like, someone who has some experience in self-storage, for example. To me, that makes more sense because that's not an area I have a lot of expertise in at the moment. I'd like to in the future. So bringing on a partner who knows it, that to me seems like a kind of a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. I can connect you with someone with that if you haven't
Oh,
heard
good.
already. But that's really cool, and that is again so important. Have you also ever thought, I don't know if they have it there, but like the business commerce, connected in the business commerce side of things to see
Yeah,
if
they do have a chamber of commerce, and I was actually on the economic development committee for a number of years when I was living in Kirkland Lake. I just resigned last year. And it was really cool just to see, what people are interested in, what the businesses are, how everything, works together in town, a lot of those kinds of things. Um,
And that nothing ever came up in a business sense, like businesses that are looking to come in or that they want to like open up a place or something like that?
Um, there wasn't a lot like that. Kirkland Lake is changing. A lot of the north is changing. Um, and the requirements and the needs, they're different based on different areas. I'm not sure. We didn't do a great job attracting new business, to be perfectly honest. We didn't put a lot of effort into that, or as much effort as I think should have been put into it. And then there were things, and again, this is, a rumor that went around, but from what I heard, Walmart was interested in building in Kirkland Lake and opening a store. And when they asked for a break on their property taxes, they were told no. So then they opened up in New Liskeard, which is a much smaller community, about an hour south. So when you kind of see, like, when a business like Walmart has that experience, then I think it's a little off-putting for other ones. I definitely think there's some opportunities there to grow in the future. But I think sometimes when people get comfortable, they just kind of expect everything to continue, and you just keep discovering more gold and more gold and more gold. So I think there's a bit of a mentality there that the gold is just going to continue forever. So there's not a need to diversify as much as, being an outsider, quote unquote. I see that need, but not everybody does.
Yeah, that's very interesting because I'd be curious to even just ask the city municipals like what do they actually want? Because it's surprising to see them pushing away business like that, and I wonder like where their actual their mindset is at with things. Because maybe it is gold, or maybe it is like I don't know. Maybe they need like a better incentive, like they need to be incentivized
Yeah.
in some way or something. Because
Yeah.
great to see the bit like because do you know is Kirkland Lake, isn't it growing?
I'd say it's fairly steady. The challenge with Kirkland Lake is that we don't do a very good job of capturing the number of residents versus the non-residents. So the population of residents itself stays relatively stable. It's around 9,000, varies between 8 and 10. But what we don't do a good job of capturing is how many people are actually renting places. They come in town, they work for a week or they work for 2 weeks, and then they go home again, and their driver's license and everything else is at another location. We don't have a really good sense of those numbers, but those are the tenants that typically most of my units are rented to. So that would be sort of an interesting piece. And I certainly don't want to be, disparaging about the town. I think there are definitely some people there who really understand the importance of economic development, of attracting new business. I find it's a bit of a slower pace. And I think maybe there's less people who are sort of engaged in those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And I think like that, like I think maybe you need to like find out actually what it is that they're looking. Where do they want to actually grow or something? Because yeah, they're rejecting all these things, and it's kind of like what do you want? Like what do you want for your city, or your town?
Yeah, I came in a bit naive, I think, and I really thought that, we were going to partner with the town and we were going to partner with some of, the older investors, the people who were really tired, the people who had apartment buildings with deferred maintenance and they were run down. And we really thought we were going to come in and we were going to do some amazing things in the community. And it didn't quite shake out like that. So we learned a ton of great lessons. And one of them was not to, count your chickens before they've hatched, to make sure that you do your research and you have your conversations and make sure you keep your vision. It's great to have a big, an amazing plan, but make sure that it's still realistic and achievable, and know that there are times where, maybe your vision wasn't realistic. And it's okay to, go in a different direction. I find that high performers pivot faster. So that's what I would have to say at this point is one of the key techniques, or not techniques, but skills that investors need right now, is the ability to pivot. Pay attention to your numbers. Know when things are not happening the way that you thought they would. Know when things are going sideways and you're not making what you thought, and then put the time and energy into figuring out what's wrong and turning things around before you get too far down that slippery slope.
Yeah, I completely agree. And have you ever thought of, you know what I think would be nice, and like you said, quiet, because I'm all about same thing, like calm, quiet places, you know? It's
Mm-hmm.
like, what about like dentists or doctors'
I love it.
offices?
That's a
Yeah.
great idea. I actually have an office space that we're just finishing painting. Just had a meeting this morning with my staff to talk about what we need to do. But we're going to have a lovely little office space, which I'm excited. We'll list that for rent as well. And we've just finished turning the old dining room into a meeting area. So we'll have space where people can come and have meetings. And maybe that's not the right call. You know, I was sort of thinking about creating maybe like a almost like an artisan market, but more like, you know, if you have a Scentsy business, or if you have Arbonne or something like that, and almost creating like a monthly what's it called, like a, not a flea market, but like I guess like an artisan market.
Mm-hmm.
But that would take a lot more time and energy. So what we started with was offering the space as a meeting space, and I'll give it 3 months. And if it doesn't take off and it doesn't work and we don't, you know, attract people, then I have the opportunity to be able to pivot and to make changes. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, cool. You should advertise to like doctor university, wherever like doctors study it basically, and tell them like, hey, we have spaces, or dentistries, you know, or like, hey, we have spaces for this. And see, because I do also think it's always better to advertise about certain things and saying it's there. Because like you said, you know, you're putting money into it, and then if it doesn't work, then you're having to pivot again. Whereas, especially, I mean, doctors and dentists, basically, they have to like buy all their equipment and stuff anyways, and they have to like set up their offices in the way they would need them to be to do what it is that they want to do. Or lawyers' offices are nice and quiet
yeah.
too.
Yeah, lawyers
You know?
lawyers are a great idea. I know, and it's funny the stuff you learn from your tenants. So I had a tenant who was in medical equipment sales for dentists, and he said the biggest challenge for dentists was all the water lines that they had to run for all the equipment. And I was like, okay, note to self. But I definitely, you know, doctors and lawyers, they would be a great fit for the space. That would make me
Hmm.
really happy, actually. That's a great idea. I think I'm going to put up a little ad. Chiropractors would be good too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those would be nice, and like put it up in like wherever they study, because a lot of people, you know, like are always thinking going off, or I don't know where, or like their associations that they have to be a part of, you know, be
Yep.
like, have a space.
Yep.
Do you,
Yep.
does anyone want this? Yeah, accountants are also nice too. They just go to their associations and just advertise and be like, hey, we have space available if anyone's interested.
Yeah. There's a part of me too that's like, maybe I should create another business. And this is where I find I've moved into from the real estate space, is now it's more about owning the space where I can run businesses out of, and the businesses make money.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. Yeah, there's any, so that's interesting. Actually, I want to just recap, because I found like a lot of things that you said so pivotal and so important was like that, like knowing where you're going to be investing is so important. And then probably, as you're saying, probably even like before buying the place, talking to the city and knowing if you guys match, you know, because at least if you do it beforehand, then maybe the chances of things happening are much better, or at least you know where they stand. And if they're just rejecting everything, um, you'll at least find what it is that they're not rejecting, you know?
Yeah, very
Because
much so.
maybe that's also what you have to find out is like, what do they actually want with the space? Like, what do they want to do with it? And then, because I mean, if you're catering to what they want, then I feel like they'll definitely push forward to helping you because you're doing what they want.
Yeah. Yeah,
And like that,
absolutely.
in small towns, I feel like exactly what you're saying. It's so important to know how easy or hard it is to get into places, because they are very actually like that small community vibe where it's like the word goes around, even if it's a lie. It's just like the word goes around, and And it's pretty intense in that sense. Like, it's like you have to, if anything, do extra work to make everyone happy over there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And you have to be very careful, the speed. I realize you can't come into a small community, and the speed that I move at is not the speed that most people in the community move at. So it's
Mhm.
it's about, I mean, we ran charitable events, and we did all kinds of things in the community to give back, but every community is different, right? So figuring out what people really want and need there, I think makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm. So then finally, so what is it? So what is it that you have in, and then what space are you trying to, oh yeah, you said the space right now you're trying to transform is, I guess it's a big room, and you're going to use it for like meetings and stuff?
Yeah, so we have a couple of different spaces. So our company, before we closed our Kirkland Lake office of our property management company, so we have an office space there that we're working on that we're almost done. We have what used to be the dining area of the restaurant, as well as the kitchen area of the restaurant that we can, maybe there's someone who'd like to rent it and, make frozen food out of there. So we've got kind of those areas. Um, by this summer, I think I'll be ready to start moving ahead with the storage portion, because we have what used to be the dance studio downstairs. It's about 2,000 square feet, got a couple of washrooms, lots of storage areas. So I think at that point I will have everything lined up, and I'll be ready to move forward with putting the storage locker business. Or if I end up not going in that direction, because I'm going to do a really deep dive on, what the needs of the community are, and, what the numbers look like and those kinds of things. So if that ends up not working out, then I'll be looking for something else. And just because you try something and it doesn't work out doesn't mean that we're a failure as an investor. It means we've
Yeah.
learned a lot.
Yeah, I was just gonna say exactly. It's like if anything you're learning from that, it gives you information that helps you move forward in in whatever that different direction
Yeah.
is. And I want to actually say also, why not do, and just because I had a talk with someone, this was like about a year ago, and she does like, she rents spaces to do like like those soup kitchens or it's like with the government, and you like send out food for like people in need, and it's just like they have this like kitchen where you should see if there's a need for that for, because I know someone that she specifically caters to that type of thing, that she actually goes and like rents out spaces. I know she was wanting to go to Winnipeg, I think was like, I guess, a very big hotspot over there that needs like, I guess, food, like people that don't have the money and food. Um, and I know that's in collaboration with the cities that you do, because she gets like her funding from the cities and stuff. And you should see if they need something like that, since you have a kitchen and you're not bringing in people, it's actually delivery. So maybe they may be okay with,
Yeah, that's
it
a
not
great
being a
point.
restaurant.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. There wouldn't be the number of people who would need places to park, right? That's a great idea. I'll definitely look into that. Thank you, Diane. I appreciate that.
No problem. No problem. Any final comments or things that you want to say about your project?
I don't think so. If you know something about storage lockers and you'd like to, help me explore those options, and if you have any tips or ideas on, ways to make sure that I've fully vetted the market, that I have a good idea of my target market, anything like that, I would absolutely love to hear from anybody who's got that information or those ideas, or anyone who
Yeah, I
just wants
love
to follow along. I'm happy to do that too.
Yeah, I love that you shared that, and like that. Like if you guys have any tips for Elizabeth, put it in the comments, DM her, and or even any information, or like that. If you just love what she's up to and what she's doing, definitely give her a follow so you can keep up to date with what she's up to. And if you love my shows and you love what I'm talking about, definitely follow me too. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It's so fun to chat with you and to hear about your project.
Thank you so much for having me here, and it's great to see you already in the new year on social media and sharing more information with everyone. We appreciate you.
Mhm. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Elizabeth, for coming on. We'll see everyone in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.